All right. So this is going to be a review of some of the concepts and terms that you learned in your undergraduate articulation course. Let's skip that part. So here are two words that you know, the definition for speech and the definition of language. So speech is a system that relates meaning to sound. So it's an organized system. And it is the verbal component of a linguistic system. So when we say someone has a speech problem, that it is very different than saying that someone has a language problem. Language is an arbitrary system of signs used to convey meaning within a linguistic community. So what does it mean by arbitrary system? Anybody want to tell me? What does it mean to say arbitrary system? Right. That a dog didn't necessarily have to be called a dog. It could have been called a cat. But, you know, so whoever came up with this, you know, whoever is the inventor of words or starts a trend going, it was sort of their idea of that. So the example, too, is I don't know who starts these trends of these slang words. I always ask my daughter, you know, who did that? She says, I don't know. Somebody said it on a video, and next thing people are using it all in high school, and I don't know if the video person developed it or if they heard it from somebody else. So it's just very interesting how language gets, you know, thrown out there from generation to generation. But language is an arbitrary system of signs or symbols used to convey meaning. And so language be, you know, like the word dog, it's a vocabulary word. And so when we say speech therapist, sometimes people will think we only deal with the way a person talks. They're thinking sounds. I've had so many people look at me with big eyes and wonderment when I say, oh, we work with fluency, we work with language, like people who've had a stroke, language with teaching children how to communicate. They're thinking more is that we're working with W for R cases, you know, lists, those types of things. Oh, yeah. Yes, Brittany, me too, my high schooler. So, and many times people don't differentiate speech from communication. So you can communicate without having speech. And that is something I used to pass on to all of my parents, that, you know, especially with children who have many disabilities, and maybe speech isn't the goal for right now, is the ability to communicate. And there will be so many parents who were like, I want my child to speak. So, because you are a speech therapist. So we really have to get the idea across that is speech and language, and much, much more. Communication is the key. So here are some normal aspects. It says of articulation, but this part, in order to articulate, you articulate words, right? And the words are part of language. So when you're talking or articulating, it can be verbal, which would be the articulating part, or it could be nonverbal. Language can be communicated through speaking, writing, and signing. It can and signing, which would include like gestures. We can even go beyond this. Through computers now, you can communicate, that type of thing. Okay. Speech is used to relate the meaning of language. the manner in which a person speaks is a predictor of that person's age. Yeah, because you definitely can know that that's a baby speaking, or that person is a child over the phone, or an adult, or even an older adult. That you can tell by sex because of the pitch of a person's voice. Now, sometimes with kids, it might be hard to tell because they all tend to have that little high pitch. With adults, if you remember from anatomy, there was a range of pitch, FO, and sometimes a guy's pitch can overlap with the lady's pitch. So you can have some guys who have a higher pitch than the average guy, and some ladies who have a lower pitch than the average lady. So there could be some confusion, if depending on sex. Mood, we can tell through a person's speech whether they're in a good mood or a bad mood. When I was going over the syllabus, I may have sounded like I was in a bad mood. Not really, I'm in a good mood. I do have a slight headache though. And that can sometimes, interfere a little bit. The state of health. Oh my, yes. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, "What's wrong with you?" And she says, "How do you know?" I said, "Are you in pain?" And she said, "How do you know I was not feeling well, that I was hurting?" I said, "Because you're taking breaths. I can hear the breath. Your speech is shorter than usual. It's not as fluent. And your voice is weak. So there's something going on." And so I, just listening to her talk, and she veered differently, I knew that she was feeling not so well that day based on her speech. The dialectal background, you can tell if someone is Southern. Many people can tell if someone is black or white. Sometimes you can't tell because some black people don't speak the dialect, and some white people speak black English, depending on the culture. Some black people speak the Appalachian English if they grew up in the mountains. And so then you have people who speak a certain way if they grew up in Boston or New York. So dialectal background. Oh, no, articulation, what this is relating to, in order to have language, articulation is a part of, in order to produce language, you have to articulate. And that's why language is under this particular heading. And language includes all these things: speaking, writing, and signing. Yeah, I think this is a misleading heading, but it is the topic of the first chapter of the book. And that's why the author of this PowerPoint wrote that up there. But basically what she's doing is giving you the definition of language. Okay. The process of using speech is based on your ability to articulate these sounds or phonemes. Now, anybody know the difference between a sound versus a phoneme? Oh, Angela's writing real quick. Very good, Angela. Yes. Phonemes have meaning. A sound, that's a sound. The K, that's a sound. But cat, the K in cat, a cat, those three things separated, but if you pull them together, they are phonemes, 3 different phonemes. But by themselves is a sound. You got that? All right. All right, phonemes are contrasted and are used to change a word's meaning. For example, in the rhyming, here, fat cat, you just change the one phoneme, you change the meaning of the word. So that makes it a phoneme. And you can also contrast F versus a K, B versus an M, in terms of where it's positioned in the mouth. That's what makes it contrasted. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. What is articulation? It is a motor behavior. So when you're talking about articulation, you're talking about a motor behavior. Motor behavior means movement. Movement of the lips, of the tongue, of the jaw, and of the velum. So motor movement, and of course the vocal folds too, because the sound has to come up, but the articulation usually happens above the vocal folds. So for example, the B sound is produced by closing the lips to block the air. It builds up pressure and then release the air while using a vocal fold vibration. This is the motor or physiological process of articulation. So if I just ask you to describe the physiological process of producing the B sound, you see it's called the B sound here, and we're only talking about the sound, then that's how you would describe it. But, you know, when you articulate different sounds together and pull them together, you also have to do some planning, and you have to do execution of sequencing of sounds. So when you sequence sounds together, you have overlapping gestures. So when you say the word cat, you do not say cat. You say cat. So in order to produce cat, the sounds and the motor movements are overlapping, right? So your motor movements are happening quick and you have overlapping gestures. Does anybody know what the one word is for that when the gestures are overlapping? Very good, co-articulation. Class, you're good. Your undergraduate teachers are going to be proud of you. Very good. All right, so now if you have a disorder in artic, that just means you have difficulties. But your difficulties are going to be with this. Now look at this. This is your key word, motor production. All right. So if you're having an articulation problem, it is because you have difficulties with motor movement. The motor movement, that means your lips, your tongue, your jaw, your mandible, your maxillae, your velum. And because you need the vocal fold vibration just to produce the sound in order to articulate so that people can hear it, because you can move your lips and everything, and no sound occurs if you don't have the vocal folds. I'm going to include the vocal fold movement. So if you have an articulation disorder, then somewhere up above there, up above the vocal folds, there's some problems with movement. So the person says T for the K. Here's an example. T is produced by placing the blade of the tongue on the alveolar ridge, blocking the air, and then releasing the air using no vocal fold vibration. And then K is, produced by raising the back of the tongue. So here we have a consonant that is produced in the front of the mouth, and here we have a consonant that is produced in the back of the mouth. So here the child is having problems raising the back of the tongue because he is substituting the T for the K. So the problem with this speech sound production is based on the tongue movement. Thus the problem is with motor movement. So when you describe an articulation that is a motor-based problem, you describe it in a phonetic sense, because it is not because of the meaning. It's not because of what is the sound they use? K. It is not because they don't understand that, oh gosh, how can I say that clearly? It isn't because there's a language-based issue with this discriminating one word from the other. It is primarily because there is an issue with where to put the tongue. Okay? It is an issue with where to put the tongue, and that's where the child or adult is having a problem. So here, when you do the description for an articulation disorder, you're going to look at it as, you're going to describe it phonetically, all right? And that's going to become important. Oh, thank you. Yes, my daughter just came home, and so Buddy got a little excited. All right, so phonetics. So phonetics will emphasize the description and classification of speech sounds, or according to how they are produced, according to how they are transmitted, you know, according to how they are perceived. You have something called articulatory phonetics, and you have something called acoustic phonetics. So articulatory phonetics will describe your place. Let me get my arrows. Hold on. Will describe place. It will describe manner and voicing. And I know all of you are very familiar with those terms. If you're not, don't be ashamed. Just ask me. B is a bilabial. Okay, that would be place, right? It is voicing, and it is plosive. That is the manner. Now sometimes I say stop. There are different authorities use different words to describe the. Okay, acoustic phonetics. Now this one is a little more complicated, I think. It will describe the frequency, intensity, and duration. So let's take the letter B again, the consonant B. So the frequency of B, like what hertz is it a low frequency sound, middle frequency sound, or high frequency sound? B. Well, B is B, and but B itself, you can't really, it's hard to say it in isolation and for you to hear it because it's just your lips popping together. The intensity, how loud is a stop, how loud is a B, and the duration of a speech sound, how long. And of course, a B is a very short duration. And usually with acoustic phonetics, we will use something called a spectrogram to look at how it is made or created. The acoustics will show up on a spectrogram. So acoustic phonetics would be the study of the properties of the sound waves as they travel from the vocal tract of a speaker to the ear of the listener. So when you produce a sound, remember in in anatomy, we talked about those sound waves propagating through the air, and then how when they hit each other, you're going to have, you know, the crest of the wave, and then whenever they separate, you have the trough of the wave, and so it makes cycles, wave cycles, and it will sound waves. And what your ear interprets in those waves, what they interpret would be the frequency. What your ear and brain will interpret will be the intensity and duration based on the acoustics of that sound. So a B, the acoustics of a B, the frequency, intensity, and duration of a B is very different from the acoustics of an S. And that way your brain then is able to interpret through the acoustics, whether you said a B or an S. So why is it, do you think, that speech pathologists do discrimination tasks with a child? And let me tell you what a discrimination task, I'm hoping you got into this in Artic and undergrad. So one of the Van Ripers, you know, the Van Riper traditional approach, you do discrimination. So do these two words, are they the same or different? Cat, bat, for the lack of a better example. Now, thinking about acoustic phonetics, what is the principle behind discrimination? Why did Van Riper think that before a child can produce a K in cat, he has to be able to discriminate K from the other sounds? Yeah, go a little deeper. That's true. Well, that's what discriminate means, to be able to hear different. But based on what I just told you, okay, Shelton is getting there. Remember, I talked about the brain. Based on the brain, auditory processing. Yes, that the brain then, okay, use acoustic terms in your description. No, not a hearing loss. Based on what I just said, frequency, intensity, and duration of speech sounds, what the brain hears, what the brain interprets. The brain will interpret whether or not the brain interprets that the frequency for the K is different than the frequency and duration of a B if you're doing cat versus bat. Now, if you're doing cat versus bat, what is different in the brain? Is it the frequency, the intensity, or the duration? Anything on there might be different versus different frequencies. What about duration? Well, I asked what about duration. Well, that's good, Shelton. One is voice. That's a difference that the brain will interpret, Shelton. Very good. What about duration? Right, the duration, they're both stops. They're both pretty short. Yeah. So that one, very good, Lincoln. So duration for the brain, it'll be about the same. That's why sometimes, you know, they will do a T for a K because the brain, that's not the differentiating feature, right? The brain isn't, you know, interpreted. And somewhere, that's the duration, the intensity might be the same too for the T and the K. It might be the same. The frequency is the thing that the brain hasn't keyed on. The frequency, the brain didn't key onto the frequency that when a child is, let's say, substituting, the word is cookie. What do they usually say? Tookie, right? Cookie, they might say tookie. So you have a T and a K. I know I said B before, but let's do this. This is a better example because it's a real life one. They'll say tookie for cookie. So they're both stops. One is produced in the front, one is produced in the back. For the child, it may be easier to produce front, so they're not listening for the frequency. They're keeping it the same. So when you do that contrasting of is it the same or the difference, the child has to listen for the, well, the child listens for the differences, but the brain is keying in on, is the frequency different? Is the intensity different? And or is the duration different? What is the difference of, what are the differences of these sounds, so that this child will then be able to move their tongue in a position to make that difference happen. Because it is the brain that gives the direction to the tongue movements, right? So the brain, once it gets clicked into the brain can then tell the tongue how to move to create the difference in frequency. So I want you to start thinking about sounds that way when you start analyzing them, and not just saying that they're different, because a parent can tell you that. A person off the street can say, well, I know what discrimination means. Discrimination means to say if something is different from the other. But as a trained speech pathologist, what does that really mean? It really means that there is something different about the frequency, the intensity, or the duration, or all three, or just one. Okay? Now you can see why a child, when they're just beginning speech, why they might do T for K. I mean, they're kind of, similar other than the place. So it can be kind of confusing for a child. And that's why you are getting paid, to understand, to be able to break it down differently than a parent can break it down. All right, so now we have auditory phonetics, and this describes how speech sounds are perceived. So in the word water, we'll say I say it all the time, water. Who says water? I guess some people do. Give me some water. So if you have a child and he says, I want some water, that's not really something you want to be concerned with as a speech pathologist. So that happens around in their communities, kind of the way that we say it. In the word ping, here you have a nasal, ing, so that nasal is going to assimilate to the vowel. And the vowel is going to be nasalized. That's normal. That's a natural thing. The word man, M-A-N, that is the same vowel as in the word cat. But they don't sound the same, do they? I used to get so frustrated, in phonetics, because I have a terrible ear. And so I told Dr. Smith, I cannot teach phonetics because I cannot hear a lot of distinctions in the vowels. I don't hear when something is aspirated. I just have a hard time with that. And that was my weak spot in graduate school. The word man, when I had to transcribe that, I was like, what vowel is that? Because I'm thinking, that sounds just like cat, cat, and I say man. Looks like that doesn't sound like But eventually I memorized and was able to do okay in phonetics. There you go. Got that out of the way. So whenever you are transcribing, and you may have to, do some in your discussion of a case, you have a phonemic transcription. This is what you need to use. A phonemic transcription is what I know how to do best, is less detailed. If you're doing a phonetic transcription, you use brackets. And with phonetics, you're very precise about all the different little variations that are going on with that sound, whether it's aspirated or non-aspirated, that kind of thing. So phonetic description is much more precise. You use brackets. Phonemic transcription, you use these things here. Okay. So when you have a speech sound, it is the end product of an articulatory motor process or motor movement. So speech is an articulatory motor movement, speech sounds. Not just sounds, but speech sounds. Phoneme A phoneme is the smallest linguistic unit. Now look at the key word here, linguistic, language. So whenever you think about putting together language, we're then now calling it phoneme versus a speech sound. Okay? So phoneme will be the smallest linguistic unit that, when combined with other units, establishes and distinguishes between word meanings. So we gave you, this is the definition as before, pit versus kit. The P here is a phoneme, K here is a phoneme within the word pit and kit. But P by itself is a speech sound. Okay, and this will become important later between deciding how you're going to analyze something as a speech sound versus how you're going to think about it as a phoneme. Then you have minimal pairs, and so pit versus kit would be a minimal pair because they are only different by one phoneme, the initial, the P or the K. So minimal pairs, phoneme, and speech sounds. Hopefully all of that is very familiar. Okay. Again, another way to look at speech sounds, because they are motor-based, the way you would describe the sound T is this. You would describe it as lingua alveolar or alveolar. I've had different people tell me it doesn't matter either way. I like alveolar. My professor at Vanderbilt, he used to always say alveolar. My other professor would say alveolar. So lingua means tongue. Alveolar would be at the ridge. So the T is produced with the tongue at the alveolar ridge, right behind the teeth, at the upper alveolar ridge. It is voiceless, and it is a plosive or stop. So here you have place, you have voice, and you have manner. You are describing a speech sound. Phonemes are language-based. Speech sounds are motor-based, and that's what you've got to keep distinct. Speech sounds are motor-based, phonemes are language-based. Later when we talk about treatment, there are people, and I agree with these people, who believe that you should mix the two. And then there are the purists who believe if you have a motor case, then you should do a motor approach. If you have a phonology case, which is speech but a language-based approach, you should only do a language-based approach. You know, I'm a believer in mixing the two. All right, some more basic terms just to remember. Allophones. You have an allophonic variation, and then here you can have the, the same phonetic sound, but then it just varies just a little bit, like a P that's aspirated versus a P that is not aspirated, a nasalized P versus a non-nasalized P. So, so allophones must be phonetically similar, produced with the same place, manner, and voicing, and not be contrasted from each other. So it's still a P, it's a P and a P, but one is aspirated, one is not, that type of thing. So here's an example. The vowel in the word pit is a short sound because it is followed by a voiceless sound, which is P. Oh, let's see. The vowel in the word pig is lengthened because it is followed by a voice phoneme, so pig. So even though this is in pig, this is in pit, and this is I in pen. But if phonetically, when you transcribe it, you've got to put that this pen, the I here, is nasalized. This one is longer, so you're going to put the 2 dots. And this I is just an I. So unfortunately, the phonetics did not show up on this PowerPoint, but you get my understanding. The meaning of the words change because the final phonemes are contrasted. However, the vowel is not contrasted itself. It is the same vowel. So that's why it is an allophonic variation. Do I have any questions so far? Oh, here's some more allophones. Any questions? Okay. So we have types of allophones. We have free variations. Here, if you have the T that's aspirated versus a T that's unaspirated, it's still a T and the word stays the same. So it just depends on how you pronounce the word top. But it's still understood by everyone that you are saying top. It's just that some people, depending on the region too that you're from, that you will use more aspiration. Some people are more nasalized in their productions of the sound, and that would be more of a free variation because the sound is still what it is and people can understand it. And if the word stays the same, I should say. If the sound is what it is, but the word stays the same. Then you have something called complementary distribution. 2 allophones do not occur in the same phonetic environment. They complement each other. The dark and light L cannot occur in the same phonetic environment. The L used in the word bulk cannot be used in the word light. So there are just some slight differences whenever you say bulk. It's a different kind of L. Now it's hard for kids, you know, when you have those kinds of that LK, LP. It's hard for me. What is the word? CALP. That is a word that we use in multicultural to describe how the differences in a child learning the academic English versus the social English, and it's CALP, C-A-L-P, and I swear it's a rough word for me. Versus the word light, okay? Dark and light L. I hope you got that in phonetics because I don't do too much with the distinctiveness between them. Other than that, I have a harder time producing words that end in LK. I don't have any trouble producing words that have that begin with at the initial L. Okay. All right. So that was artic. Everybody got artic? So speech sounds. Motor-based. Phonology, a branch of linguistics that deals with the study of speech sounds, the artic part, and sound patterns are combinations. I'm sorry, somebody is coming in. Hold on. Okay, there it is. So under phonology, you're going to be looking at the speech sounds as more phonemes, phonemic, because you're thinking about the language-based part of it and not the sound individually. And it's not based on the tongue positioning. It's based on how the child learned to produce the sound. So if the child learned to produce the sound in the wrong way by listening and not monitoring himself, then the idea is exposing the child to the correct production of the sound over and over again. Then just like they learn language, you know, just like they learn first words. It's the same way they learn first sound versus motor positioning. So that's the idea behind the language base. So a sound is a phoneme, and under phonology, we're talking phonemes. Okay, I think that's pretty simple under there. Now, if somebody has a disorder, then it's not like one sound. It's a group of sounds, and these sounds have something in common. It's a system of phonemes and patterns. You're looking for a pattern because they've learned a rule. Just like, you know, in learning grammar and syntax, there are rules. In learning phonology, there are rules. And it's not because the child's tongue, you know, is a problem, or it's because they learned the wrong rule. And so once they've learned the rule that to produce a K, they have to position the tongue in, they must position the tongue in a certain way in the back to change the vocal tract so that a K can be produced. Once they learn that rule, they'll be able to do it, because there's nothing wrong really with tongue movement per se. It's the rule that they kept. It's that immature rule that they had at age 2. They didn't outgrow the rule. So change the rule, the way that you change language, then you will change the speech pattern. So that's the idea behind phonology and how these approaches were developed. So the child says B for beat. And the rule for the child is that I have a syllable structure, and my syllable structure is just CV. So even though there is a sound there, I'm paying no attention to it, because if there is a CVC word, syllable shape, coming at me, I'm going to reduce it to a CV. That's my rule. It doesn't matter what the sound is. It could be a T at the end. It could be an F at the end. It could be a K at the end. It doesn't matter what's at the end. My rule is I only do a consonant and a vowel. So your job is to change the rule. And when in changing the rule, you change the movement. So that is phonology, language-based. Archaic, motor-based. So when you look in and observe speech pathologists, and if they're telling the child, put your tongue up behind your teeth, they're doing articulation therapy. They're doing a motor-based approach. All right, any questions? Okay. All right, phonotactics. This is a description of the allowed combinations of phonemes in a language. Now remember, in language, when you talk about syntax and grammar, you got to put the words in a certain order, right, in a sentence, or it doesn't make any sense. The same thing in speech also. You got to put those sounds in a certain order, or it doesn't make any sense. And there are rules. You know, in some languages, you know, they can have, what, 3 consonants or four consonants together, or 4 vowels together or something. And I'm looking at that, I'm like, I don't even know how to start to pronounce that word, you know, in another language. However, in English, we have our rules the same as other countries and languages have their rules. So the L plus the T combination is allowable only in the middle and final positions. But you do not see an L and a T together at the beginning of a word in English. Yeah, okay. I don't even know how to say that. Papiamento? And what country is that? Okay. So yeah, so it's very language. That's an interesting field, linguistics. It's just that, not that many jobs, right? So that's why I decided, okay, I'm going to be a speech pathologist. The Aruba. Okay, thank you, Adriana. And thank you for asking, Lillian. I appreciate it. Yeah. All right, so let's look at speech sounds versus phonemes. Speech sounds would be the actual realization of the phoneme. It can be produced, transmitted, and perceived, and is the basic unit within phonetics. A phoneme is linguistically relevant, is contrastive, and it is the basic unit within phonology. Speech sounds, phonetics, phoneme, phonology. So if you can think of it that way. So some more phonetics versus phonology. Let's see anything different. So pretty much the same thing that was said earlier, just in different words. Right here is a little bit different, I think a little clearer. Phonetics will emphasize the form of speech sounds, and phonology emphasizes the function of phonemes, how it functions within the word. Articulation disorders versus phonological disorders. Motor, for artic, difficulty with motor production. Phonological, impairment in the representation and organization of phonemes. So here you're looking at the rule pattern, how they're organized and represented in the brain, the rule pattern. You think about language base, you're talking about something different happening in the brain. The motor production, you're thinking a little lower. You're thinking a little lower in terms of a movement of the actual muscles. Articulation, disturbances in the peripheral speech motor aspects. Disturbances are central. That central means central nervous system, that's the brain. Okay? So how they're processing language has also interfered with how they're processing speech. So the rules for speech have been somewhat disrupted. So articulation, more of a phonetic description, phonology, you're thinking about them more as phonemes, as having meaning. So with a phonological approach, what wouldn't you do if you started doing a therapy approach? Therapy, in artic, you have these different stages of approaches. Phonology, you have different stages of approaches. Artic, one of the first things you do is what? If you're thinking about a speech error as phonetic, what would be the first thing, one of the first things that you would do with artic? If you're thinking about a speech error as phonetic, you're going to teach what first? Anybody? I may not have made it clear enough, but I got some. Whoa! No rules, not for artic. That's Adriana, that's exactly what I was trying to say. But placement is right. Sounds and isolation. That's right, isolation. Because remember phonetics. See, go back to that one. Phonetic has to do with the sound sound, phonology, phoneme, phonetic, sound. So if you're thinking phonetics and the articulation approach, you're going to look at the sound and say, we're going to do the sound in isolation. If you're doing a true phonological approach, a language approach, and you're thinking of these errors as phonemic, then you have to start, in my opinion, at the word level, because that's where it has meaning. Now, the word level can be CV, because there are some CV words, like the word no, go, there are some CV words, but it has to have some meaning in order for it to be phonemic. Okay? Are you getting me? Getting the idea? Okay. Yeah, I always want you to think a little deeper. Think a little bit deeper, not just on the surface, because you have to remember, I am a clinician, but I'm also a scientist. And my focus in my PhD program was speech science. And so that's why I want you to kind of think just a little bit deeper, away from the surface of what the word means, not just understanding definitions, but understanding what goes on under it. So, phonology. So here with phonology, you're thinking about language-based concepts, and you're going to link them together, and you're going to develop a framework from which to operate. Okay. You must understand the relationship between phonology and phonetics and the level of representation. So, phonetics would be a lower level of representation. Phonology, higher level of representation, because phonology, they believe, starts with it's more central base in the brain. Phonetics, they believe, is more peripheral base with the muscles. Does that make sense? Let's see here. We have a question from one of your classmates. Let's see. Between Arctic and another language influence. Are you talking about a bilingual child, Lillian? Lillian, you're jumping ahead. That's another course I teach. I thought so. All righty. In that case, what you have to have then is if you have another child who also is from that same country or neighborhood or that influence, and what you can do is to have them produce a word. If they have the same language influences and they can say it correctly, then it is an Arctic problem for your child and not just the influence. Does that make sense? So, for example, if you take a child over here in America and they speak African American English, well, we say, including myself, this for this. That is an influence of their dialect. And so if you bring in another AAE speaker who passed the Arctic test, okay, and they're saying this as well, then it is part of the culture and not an error. And so you would work on a different sound that they're having problems with in terms of it being an error. Now, some people say work on AAE, anyway, because it, helps people get jobs and because of the prejudice and bias that Americans have for AAE speakers, and not just AAE, but Appalachian speakers, then you teach code switching, but it is not an error if it's part of their language. So I hope that was I able to, basically if you don't, sometimes on ASH's website, it will have a list of what is normal. If you go to ASH's website and go type in under the search button, dialects, and under dialects, they'll give you a list of all the different dialects that they have in the U.S. and also from different countries. You can even put in the country. And they'll tell you what is normal in that dialect and how it is different in the U.S. And that way you can tell whether it's dialect or whether it's an error. And I will discuss that in a class that you'll take 2 years from now. And we'll talk about dialects a little bit when we talk about treatment. We will talk about dialects a little bit. But very good that you're thinking already about, treatment with different types of cases that maybe aren't as easy as some other cases. So you want to look at underlying representation and the speech error. Excuse me. You want to look at, phonology. You want to think about phonology and language. You want to think about the phoneme, naturalness, language universals, and distinctive features. So we'll talk about these. So, okay. Okay. I don't know why she has so many of the same things. Okay, phonetics, I like this. Let me tell you how this one is a little bit different. I like this definition. This is the definition that I would use because I think this is pretty clear. It says phonetics, the physical nature, without regard to how those sounds function in a language. I like that. It's the physical nature of sound, the movement of sound, and it doesn't matter the context. It doesn't matter how it functions in a language. You're going to teach where to place that tongue to get it. Phonology is to study how sounds are organized. That would be the patterns. The others is repetitive. Phonetics can be studied without regard to the language syntax and semantics. Phonology, when you're doing a phonological case, and you will do a phonological case in this class, you have to consider all this stuff. You have to consider syntax. What's the child's syntax? You have to consider his vocabulary, semantics, morphology. Oh my God, this is so important. Morphology is just going to be really important. What is morphology? Anybody? What's morphology? I don't see anybody writing. Oh. Like for example, what? Yes, word meaning. The word meaning kind of got me. Okay, not word meaning. Word meaning is some. I need to. What's the difference between semantics and morphology? Okay, very good, very good. Okay, very good. Yes. So morphology would be those linguistic features that can change the meanings of a word. A morpheme can be a word by itself or it can be prefixes and suffixes. By adding small, oh, I like that, Brittany. I'm going to take it. Can I take it back, Brittany? That definition. When I write my paper, I will give you credit, Brittany. No, I'm not writing a paper on language. But anyway, phonology, so you have to think about morphology, you have to think about pragmatics too. So you have to think about the entire umbrella of language when you're analyzing this child's speech. That's what makes phonology so interesting. I love phonology. It just makes it so interesting. I see phonology as a puzzle to solve. And I hope I give you, interesting enough cases that you will be as excited about it as I am. Okay, usually not. So when you think about phonology, the people who are involved in this, I think, when did it happen? I think it was the 80s, because I graduated in 1981, yeah. So it had to be like the 70s, yeah, the late 70s or 80s, that phonology became this big thing. And, you know, if you didn't understand phonology, then you were not a hip speech pathologist. So I just have been so excited about phonology because, you know, when I went to work and there were these people, these other speech pathologists there, and they did not know phonology, I just felt like I was the it speech pathologist, you know. So anyway, it's just a little elitist, but and then I came from Illinois, and guess who was there? Barbara Hodson. She was a young professor. She had just discovered, what is her approach? Well, she hadn't just discovered it. She was actually doing the experiment cycles, the cycles approach. And so therefore, when the professor is there that invented an approach, guess what they make everyone do in clinic? We all had to do the Barbara Hodson's cycles approach, phonological cycles. So that's what I came out doing and being biased toward. So in doing her approach, in doing a phonological approach, you have to believe that there is an underlying level of representation, that these segments are stored as phonemes, and each segment, when they pull it together, they have a meaning. It's a meaningful segment. The phonemes themselves, by themselves and together, have meaning. Okay. But whenever you look at the phonetic level of representation, you're talking more about allophones, where the phonemes there have are the same, but they are a little bit different in how they're produced. We talked about that. Okay, we talked about that. All right, so naturalness. The naturalness of speech refers to certain regularities that occur in language. Natural speech phenomena occur more often, and it is widespread in the languages of the world. Now, what does that mean, naturalness? It seems to be natural that when you hear a noise, it may sound like a noise, you hear these intonational patterns, and you might be in another country, but you know that it's a person. You don't know what they're saying. You may not even see the person, but based on the intonational patterns, based on the pitch and the sound waveforms, based on all of these things, these different sounds that you're hearing, it is a natural thing for you to think, oh, this is another person. Okay. It is a natural for all languages to have consonants and vowels. They may have some different rules with the consonant and vowels, but they all have consonants and vowels. They also have syllables. Okay? The CV syllable is more natural, and especially as little babies, you know, there are some things that little babies across the world kind of do until they get to a certain age and they go with the language that they hear the most. So a CV is a more natural syllable structure than CVC. They found that to be just all over. So if it's more natural to say, if a child is having some difficulties with picking up the different speech patterns or speech sounds, he's going to go with the ones that become more natural. So he's going to have that CVC syllable is going to develop first before the CVC. Okay, syllable. So that could be that's one syllable too. But so CVC syllable structure is going to happen before the CVC syllable. The CV syllable structure is going to happen before the CVC syllable structure. I'll get it right, people. It's 7:25. You know, usually at this time I'm winding down because at 8 o'clock I usually stop because we don't take a break. But now we still have another hour to go. Is that right? No. 5:30, 9:30. All right. Okay. Markedness. We may have to take a break. Markedness. The sound that is more natural is referred to as the unmarked sound. So in your journal articles, this is the only place I see the words marked and unmarked, is if you're reading an article on RTIC. And unfortunately, because it's the summer, I won't have you do that. I do have you do it in some of my other classes, but not for RTIC. So I really wish that we had more time so that I could make you read an article. But some articles, they will say this is a marked sound. So the marked sound means that it requires more effort. The child may say it a little louder because they're not sure how to say it. The adult, you know, including myself, when a word is unnatural for me to say, you know, I'll put a little more emphasis to it. I have to think about how I say it, similar to that word that Adriana, the country, or even the language. I was like, you know, am I saying it correctly? So unmarked numbers, which would be your more natural, they are more natural, they require less articulatory effort, they are less acoustically complex, less ambiguous, perceptually ambiguous, they are acquired earlier, and they occur in more languages around the world. So these are your more natural and also called unmarked numbers of phonemes, or unmarked phonemes. So, and just think about it. Think about a child who has an articulation problem. And let's think about one who is very severe. And if they're doing substitutions, for those of you who are out there as speech assistants, or those of you who maybe have had children with RTIC problems, or been around kids with RTIC problems, what sounds do you hear them saying the most? What are the most common sounds that you hear children who are just, you know, severely, a severe articulation or phonological issue? What sounds do you hear, the ones you do hear? What is it that they can say? What sounds? A T, yes. I'm not so sure about G, but definitely D, yes. Oh, you're saying substituting, Jackie. Jackie's saying substituting. Yes, I got you, Jackie. Sound made towards the front, yes, more natural. M, think about M, just your lips together. Think about the T and the D, some of the earlier, their stops, some kind of early. No, I don't hear R, Hannah. M, W, sometimes, yeah, sometimes W is kind of hard too, because that rounding of the lips can be kind of hard. But B, T, D, those are the sounds. What's B or P? B, P, T, D, B, P, T, D, M, and N. Okay, yeah. Other than M, B, P, T, D, what was the other with N? What do all of those have in common? They are all, in terms of their manner, Yeah, stops, yes, plosives, I guess, yes, stops. I like stops. I have a bias for the word stop. I won't mark you wrong or anything, but you know, I'm like plosive. But yes, I do know people say that. Okay, so guess what? The first sounds that most babies produce will be stops. The sound that you will hear children who have articulation problems, they will reduce it to a stop. Stop. And they'll produce things from the front of their mouths first, more so than the back. So a lot of times they'll leave out that K and the G because they're back, and back is harder. So less articulatory effort, less acoustically complex, less ambiguous, and all of these things. Most visual, very good. That makes it less ambiguous because they can look at it. Anyway, so just giving you some things to think about. Those sounds are considered more natural and they're unmarked. So if you see the word unmarked on an ASH exam, you know, I want you to think about those stops. So I remember that now, yeah. Okay. Okay, so now here you go. Now there are going to be degrees. There are going to be some that are going to be more natural than others, and there are going to be degrees. So voiceless sounds are more natural than voiced. So these sounds here will be more natural than these over here. They're going to be more natural. So if a child is going to say a voiceless sound, and if a child is going to say an S, you know that's a more difficult sound for a lot of kids is S here. If a child is going to say a fricative or a continuant, he's going to say an S before he says a Z. If he's going to do a stop, according to this, he's going to do a P over a B. I'm not so sure I hear that. He should do a T before a D. I'm not so sure I hear that either. I hear a lot of D's in my babies, you know, who are first beginning their speech sounds. I hear a lot of D's. Stops are more natural than the fricatives. Okay, here they are. They're going to be more natural. It doesn't mean that they will say all of these sounds, but all of these stops or all of these fricatives, it's just giving you examples that stops are more natural. So language universals are related to what is considered more natural or easier to produce. The ah vowel is a true universal because it occurs in all languages. So think about a baby. You know, they're sitting there and laying back and looking up at the ceiling. Their mouths are open, their tongues are a little bit, you know, a little bit big, I think, and they go, going in and out, you know, I mean, it's just kind of a more natural thing than just kind of say, you know, that type of thing. So it makes sense physiologically as to why that might be the case for all babies. So some are near language universals, meaning that they have linguistic features that are common to most languages, but not all. The N occurs in some languages, but not all languages. So it is languages. It is a near language universal. So you have an which is universal, a true universal, and you have an N, which is a near language universal. Okay. Now we're going to get into distinctive features. Let's see how many. You know what? I'm on slide 35, and I have 122 slides, so I'm going pretty slow. Distinctive features. So a feature is a subphonemic characteristic. The characteristic is usually acoustic or articulatory. All right, let's see here. We can skip that part. It's pretty. A distinctive feature is binary. meaning you either have it or you don't. So it's going to be a plus or a minus. Here are some common terms that you will use to describe a vowel or used to describe a consonant. Sonorants would be like vowels. Obstruents would be a common term to describe a consonant. We borrowed the distinctive feature approach in terms of looking at speech sounds from linguists. Well, in our field, we borrowed a lot of things from a lot of people. A lot of our language theories are from psychologists. Okay, distinctive features. What is a sonorant? A sonorant allows airstream to pass unimpeded through the oral or nasal cavity, and all of your vowels will be sonorants. Some phonemes, nasals, glides, and liquids are sonorants. The obstruents, I mean, it's very obvious here. Here there is some type of disturbance, turbulence, or blockage of airflow, creating the turbulence. Okay? And there are some examples there. Sibilants refers to phonemes with a sharper sound than others, high frequency. So when you think of sibilants, you want to think of high frequency sounds. And then you have approximants. It refers to consonants with a much wider passage of air, resulting in a smooth airflow. So approximants, the wider passage of air, and you have your glides and your laterals. So here, the S has a more narrow passage of air, so it would not be an approximant. But I want you to notice this, that one consonant can have more than one feature, category. You can. So, this is a good table, and I copied this from somewhere and put it in your PowerPoint. And look, this is old, 1968, Chomsky and I called him Hale. I don't know, but Chomsky. When I used to teach language development, talked about Chomsky all the time. But anyway, so here are your consonants across here. Okay, right through there. Here are your features, vocalic. So if you notice, you have that dash, that means none of these are vocalic. However, this L here and this R will have some vocalic features. Like you have a vocalic R, like mother, and then the L at the end. Right now I can't think of one. Maybe like tunnel, total. Oh, bottle. Sometimes they will make that more vocalic. Okay, and then as you can see, H doesn't really belong with either one in terms of the distinctive feature chart, nor the W or the Y. And there may be some charts that might be a little bit different, but this is the one that I used and the one that a lot of people use. So then it gives you the position of the consonants, whether this position is based on where the tongue is in the mouth, whether the tongue is high, whether the tongue is in the back, or whether the tongue positioning is in the back, whether the tongue positioning is low, and in the front of the mouth, or whether you have to do some the body of the tongue is more rounded here. This one is whether the lips are rounded and tongue. Here you have tenseness. How is it like tenseness in terms of the pressure needed to produce it? Whether the air is continuing to flow or whether the air is stopped. This is one that we used to use all the time in Illinois, continuant, a continuant or a non-continuant. That was the preference of the professor, and that's what I went with. Whether something is nasal or not, and as you can see, we only have 3 nasals. Strident is another term we used to use at Illinois to describe the fricatives. We used to say stridency. And then your sonorants are listed here. So here are all of your different features for the different consonants. Now, I hope that you've learned these in phonetics. I will not be testing you on like all the very specific features. However, I do expect you to know the very common features, like whether something is vocalic or consonant, whether something is a continuant, a nasal, or strident, whether something is voiced or voiceless. All right? So those are the ones that I will be, sort of looking for because they are common, and they'll be the ones that you'll see children have problems with, the most common problems you'll see with kids. Then you have the suprasegmentals of speech: stress, intonation, and loudness and pitch. And those we've already gone over in anatomy. Let's see if there's anything. Let's see. Okay. Now you know here, intonation is a little bit different than stress. Intonation has to do with the entire pattern of flow of the conversation, of the speech, whereas stress is putting emphasis on a part of an utterance versus another part of an utterance. Okay. A juncture is where you might add punctuation, where there's a comma, where there's a period. So it's a different kind of pause if there is a comma versus a pause if there's a period. A little longer pause if there is a period. And then, of course, a bigger pause if you're waiting for the person to respond. So the juncture has to do with helping make semantic distinctions and also pauses between words. So how do you know when, let me say this, one of the reasons that we don't understand people in other languages is because we can't tell when a word begins and a word ends. It sounds like everything is running together, right? But for me, because you know English, you know that I just said several distinct words. But someone from another country, it sounds like everything is running together because they don't understand the suprasegmental device that distinguishes the semantic distinctions within my speech. And suprasegmental also helps to emphasize the new information that you might be given in a sentence. So sometimes we'll add a little more stress because the information is new, or we may pause a little more trying to think of it just the right way to explain something. So it's whenever you use prosody to emphasize or highlight new information. Any questions? Hi, buddy. All right, people, are you still with me? Okay, good. Wow, look at you. Very good, class. You are such a good class. I'm going to tell you, I don't think I was the best student because I am sure I would have left the teacher by now and creeped back in, you know, at another point. All right, so, oh, look at Angela. Thank you, Angela. Angela said I had to go get something to eat. Oh, I don't mind, of course. If I didn't have to do all the talking, I would be getting something to eat as well. All right, co-articulation. Now, co-articulation this is so interesting to me. It is what I did my dissertation on, but I am not going to go into all of that detail because, as my husband said when I asked my husband to proof my dissertation on co-articulation, he said, "This is the most boring dissertation. I cannot read." After one page, he says, "I cannot read this." So he is right. It is not the most interesting thing unless you're, into that. Yeah. All right. Now, okay. Co-articulation refers to the influence that one sound will have upon another. And you see, I just said it. Another. My TH went into that D, part of my dialect. Not only part of my black dialect, but also part of my southern dialect as well. So running all those sounds together and the influences of the vowels, it just really changes the word. But isn't it interesting that it doesn't change it enough so that you can't understand that I said the word another, right? So even though co-articulation occurs and the sounds influence each other, there is a distinctness to each word and a universalness for the language, for the English language, that we know that is the word that she is. We all can understand that particular word. I just find it so amazing. So a co-articulation describes the concept that the articulators are constantly moving into position to reorganize, like in a split second, millisecond, to produce our words. Because when we think about our words, we're looking at them in segments. We say we're going to produce the P, we're going to produce the I, we're going to produce the T. But when we actually produce it, we're producing it all simultaneously and smoothly because of co-articulation. Our mouths are able to adapt, and adaptation would be changes in the configuration of the vocal tract, even though the sound sounds the same to the listener. That's because whenever Whitney says the word cat, and Julie says the word cat, and Dr. Gibson says the word cat, we all have 3 different frequencies that our brain will interpret as cat, because we all say it slightly different, all 3 of us. However, within that variability, there is something called the mean, the average. And what the brain does is calculate an algorithm that gives us an average and also the range of what the word cat will sound like from different individuals, so that we still interpret it as cat. So the brain has a collection of different frequencies. As long as you're within that range, that range of variability, then the brain will interpret your production of cat as cat, even though it's slightly different from my production of cat. So, so the adaptation occurs. Assimilation, modification of the sound may be extensive enough that a perceptual change is detected. Okay? So sounds become nasal because of neighboring sounds. And I already gave you the example of man. Here, mop, cop, the op sounds the same. So here you don't really see the assimilation. At least I don't hear the assimilation, but that could be a flaw because my ear, I'm not very good at hearing phonetics. But in man, it's definitely that ah is different than ah in other contexts. You can hear the nasalization. All righty, so that's any questions? Oh, we're getting to the part, this next part, we should be able, or we'll breeze through this because this is such an easy introduction to the speech mechanism. So, and if you look how pretty these slides are. Just that provides some comic relief in the class. You can see here, this change in font, and then you got this here, and look at how they changed the color. So, and then you have this fancy background. Well, you can believe this is not a Dr. Gibson production. And as you look at what is going to be said here, mine are usually black and white. So you say, oh, Dr. Gibson did this one. She did it in a hurry. That's right. I did it in a hurry because there might be, some typos, and I apologize for that. I'm going to try to do better. All right. So here we go. Here are our 4 systems linked to speech production. You have respiration, phonation, resonance, and articulation. Okay, I feel like I'm missing one. We're missing prosody, but that's okay. All right, so respiration, phonation, resonance, and articulation. Look, you're familiar with these 4 systems, and they have to operate simultaneously in order for you to produce speech, right? We understand the importance of each of those systems. If any one will be damaged, then your body has to compensate in some way, right? And or be trained to compensate for the damage. Everything must be operating appropriately, especially the nervous system, the central nervous system. What is the central nervous system? Anybody know? What is CNS? I don't know if we did that. I don't know if I did that in anatomy. I don't know if I did central. I think I did. Didn't I go for? There you go. Very good. The brain and the spinal cord. That's right. It has to be, the central nervous system is intact and functioning properly, and that then you will have good speech production. Anybody know what their peripheral nervous system is? PNS? I think I went over that now. Yes, and what are those nerves called, Kendra? Or anybody, it doesn't have to be Kendra. Cranial nerves, and what's the other one? No, cranial nerves, spinal. Very good, very good. Yes. All right, so the respiratory system, you have 2 tracts, the upper and lower. Here you have the upper respiratory tract, the mouth, the nose, and the throat. These would be your articulators. And the larynx would be your phonatory, your phonation area. But these together would be the upper respiratory tract. So the upper respiratory tract would be above the glottis. The lower, okay. You have the respiratory system here. This is just a review. I won't ask you to label this picture, so don't get nervous. But you already know what this is, don't you? Yes, you know all of these parts. We don't even have to go over them. You are just so familiar with every bit of it. So enjoy that picture. The lower respiratory tract, you have below the glottis, you have the trachea, you have the bronchial tree, you have the lungs, and you have the alveoli sacs. Okay? And that's just a cute little picture. You know, and the bronchial tree, you know, that would have to do with the main stem bronchus, the secondary bronchus, the tertiary bronchi. Okay, very simplistic here. Air is taken into the lungs. Your inhale is gradually released from the lungs, and then you speak on exhalation, that type of thing. Okay, well, you have the different respiratory muscles are involved in the process of moving air into and out of the lungs. What are some of those muscles that move air into the lungs? Oh, sorry, diaphragm. Very good, very intercostal. Diaphragm. Anybody else? What are some of the muscles to move air out of the lungs? Good. Abdominal muscles. Very good. The internal intercostal muscles for out. External intercostal for in. Do you remember those? Yes. All righty. Very good, people. Very good. I see some hesitance. So Dr. Gibson, once the final was over, I just let all that stuff go. All right. An exchange of gas takes place in the alveoli, you know that. And then oxygen is taken into the lungs, carbon dioxide is removed from the lungs, and then the vocal folds are in open position. What's the word for open when you talk about the vocal folds for breathing? That's right, abda. Very good. So let's see what else is being added. During speech or voice, the vocal folds are closed. And what's the word for closed for vocal folds? They're in what kind of position? Adducted position. And then when that as the air leaves the lungs, pressure is built up under the vocal folds. What does that cause? That pressure that's built up under the vocal folds? Subglottic pressure. Very good, very good. The pressure causes the vocal folds to burst open and vibrate, and then they close back, and that's called the Bernoulli effect. It's written there, doggone it. I feel like I put that in there, the Bernoulli effect. All right. We speak on the air that is exhaled. Vocal fold vibration is the process of phonation. Woo-hoo! Did that bring back pleasant memories? Well, okay, let me rephrase it. Did that bring back memories? Yes, all righty, there you go. Okay, now I get more. Oh, stop. Okay, now I get more response. More responses. Okay, so here, it's a very simplistic review, Angela. Remember, I used to make y'all say, I want you to name those muscles. Okay, so now we have the nasal cavity, the tongue, the larynx, the trachea, okay, the diaphragm. So, look, now that you look at these pictures, you're probably saying, this is just so easy, so easy. And next year, you will be saying, my God, this is so easy. This is even easier. All right, so now this little space in here, you know that's the glottis. And then here are your vocal folds, your muscles, what was the name of the vocal folds? What's the name of the muscle? Oh, here's the review of that. The muscle that we call the vocal folds. Oh, thyroid, yay, very good. Okay, so here, the phonatory system, the larynx, so this is the entire thing here is the larynx, is located in the neck between the root of the tongue, That's why some of the tongue muscles where some of your hyolaryngeal elevators and depressors, the larynx is located in the neck between the root of the tongue and the trachea. Trachea is right here. There's your tracheal rings. The larynx is a primary organ of phonation, and phonation also involves the coordination of many muscles, organs, and structures in the abdomen, in the chest, in the throat, in the head. So what are they talking about when she says phonation involves the coordination of your abdomen? What does that mean? Because you know me, if you put something like that for me, I'll be like, what in the world are you talking about? For respiration, very good. So what is she talking about? And I like that the person said the stomach muscles expand. Somebody said something like that. What about the chest? What in the world is she talking about in the chest? The phonation involves the coordination of muscles in the chest. What muscles is, what are you talking about there? The rib cage, and what does that have to do with? What system does that have to do with? What system? The intercostal muscles? What system? This is the phonatory system. Okay, yes, there you go, respiratory system. Very good. And then what about the throat? What is going on there? What are they talking about when they say the throat? That always gets me. So these are like terms lay people use. Oh, the throat, the phonatory system, yes, yes. So we always think, you know, the larynx there and the throat. And then what about the head? What in the world would the head have to do with the phonatory system or phonation? Yes, Adriana, the brain. And what does the brain have to do with anything? No, we're talking about phonation. So phonation is an artic. Angela. Angela, you are so funny. Angela answers everything, Dr. Gibbs. No points, Angela. Okay, more details, Angela. More details. Yes. What does the head have to do with it? Uh-oh, Brittany. Motor control and signaling. Okay, Brittany, give me more. Brittany is on the right track. We're only talking about phonation, not language. But Jackie, correct production, too vague. Brittany. Okay, planning. I like planning. The brain. What did we talk about in anatomy as it deals with the brain? What is it that causes phonation? What happens? Inner laryngeal muscles in proper position. How does it keep the inner laryngeal muscles? You mean the intrinsic, Whitney? How does it do that? Impulses. Thank you, Nicole. And how is it sending those impulses? Through what? Through nerves. Thank you, Amanda. Stimulates the nerves. That's how the head is involved. It causes the nerves to send messages to where? To the vocal cords. And what nerves send messages to the vocal cords? Vagus. Very good. What nerves? Oh, good. Thank you. Gave me the number X. What nerves send messages to the lungs? That's quite a hit. You know, what is that nerve? Phrenic. Very good. Very good. There's another one. For phonation, no, not. We got vagus. Okay. All right. So there you go. Excellent job. So even though this is written in very simplistic terms, which is still written very well, you know then you know Dr. Gibson didn't write it. It's very good. It's very clear. You know, I have to have all this other information. You, as speech pathologists, as future speech pathologists, look at you. You're able to break it down to know, okay, so yes, the head is involved, but now you can go into details, not to your parents, you know, unless it's somebody very sophisticated, but with other professionals as to, you know, how the brain is involved in it, in the production of something as simple as a K. Okay, hold on. Tonight. Okay, let me go to the next one. Alrighty. Okay. The larynx consists of these cartilages. You see this? This is easy. So, you know, the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, and then you have the hyoid bone. Oh, then the arytenoid cartilage, we can't see that. But the arytenoid cartilage is also, it's a posterior view. Maybe it's on the next page. This is an interior view. No, I didn't. Oh, yeah, there it is. Sorry. Okay. And that's just another picture of the larynx. A very beautiful picture. Some reason this looks like me as well. The epiglottis, there's a trachea, here are your arytenoid cartilages, since they're paired right there, okay, and your corniculate cartilage, there you go. Let's move on. The biological functions of the larynx, we've gone over those, and anatomy, you know, protection basically, right? At the original purpose, it wasn't for speaking, it was for, you know, protecting the airway. Also, it helps to create, or equalize the pressure within the body, like when you get ready to lift something. And also keeps the airway open so that you can breathe. Social function was created by people and animals for social reasons, to call out for survival. I mean, that helped to call out for help or for mating purposes, those kinds of things. We know that vocal folds are thicker in men than in women, and in adults than in children, and that's why you hear the different pitch levels in the different age groups. Now, resonation. Resonation, what is it, if there's a resonance issue, what is it that you will hear in a person's voice? Oh, people aren't writing very quickly. No, Brittany. No, but that's a good try, Brittany. I love it. Oh, I think I know what you're trying to say. If there's a resonance issue, what is it that you will hear in a person's voice? Nasality. Yes. So if there's a nasal issue, then where is the primary problem in most cases? The velum. Yes, yes. And occasionally, if a person has, not the uvula, I mean the uvula can be if it's bifiid, but it's usually the entire velum, the soft palate. The uvula, I guess, if there is an issue, if it doesn't go all the way, help to go all the way back. But also if there are some tissue damage in the pharyngeal cavity, as the air molecules bounce off the pharyngeal cavity, then you can have a difference in the quality of your sound. So resonance has to do with the quality, the overall quality of your voice. You know, some people can have a good pitch, but their voice quality is off, you know. The resonance gives each person his or her unique voice quality, resonation. I don't know if I told you the story. I think I told you the story about the person who had the very first laryngeal transplant. So her larynx was removed. Well, it was removed for cancer anyway, her vocal folds, and they transplanted the larynx into her body, her throat area, and this was the first one done. And then after, you know, a few weeks or so, they had months, they had her talk, and her friends came over to see her, and they said, oh, "You sound like you." And they do try to do the matching so that the pitch will sound the same or similar pitch. But she sounded like her. And it was because her resonating cavity, which was the pharyngeal area, the oral cavity, and the nasal cavity, that was still the same. It was just the vocal folds that were different. The vocal folds, you know, set your FO. What is FO? Fundamental frequency. Oh, very good. You're using the scientific terms. But what is the psychological correlate for fundamental frequency? Pitch. Very good. You understood my psychological correlate. I love it. I just love to see the growth. And when I see you in a year from now, you're going to miss me, people. I know you are. But in a year from now, when I see you again, you're just going to be so different. Our vocal folds, the pitch may have been just a little bit different, but she still sounded like herself. So even if you sound a little hoarse, I still know that it's you, Chesley, or Joshua, even if you sound a little hoarse, because you know, your resonating cavity isn't affected. Your hoarseness is affected at the vocal cord area. So anyway, there you go. So resonance is the process wherein frequencies in the laryngeal tones are emphasized depending upon the size and shape of the speech resonator. So your speech resonator, your vocal tract, right, it changes in size and shape, configuration, as you are speaking. And when you do that, the air molecules that are coming from the glottis, right, from being constricted in the glottis, they're bouncing around into your vocal cavity in its particular shape to produce certain frequencies. And it will resonate on the particular tissue that fits the best, that it likes the best. And so if you're producing a B, it will resonate on the tissues that help to form the frequency of the B. So when they say resonating frequency for B, they're talking about the frequency that best represents the sound of B, and that's a resonating frequency. So it is the most natural frequency that occurs based on your tissue and the shape of your particular vocal tract. Everybody has their own resonating frequency. Now, the articulation system. Here we have the tongue, the lips, the velum, which would be the soft palate, the hard palate. You have the teeth, dentition, the mandible, which would be the jaw. The lips would be the orbicularis oris, tongue, the lingua. Oh, I gotta turn on the light. Okay. I believe I went back and wrote in these words. Nice picture here. There is your uvula hanging. And what is a sign for you that there might be some issue with resonance, or at least with nasality? If you look at the uvula and you see, yes, what is it called? What's another word that most people, it's not really split. Well, there might be a split. It's bifid. Yes, yes, bifurcated. Bifid uvula. Very good. Let's see, anything else I want to quiz you on? Asking you questions I feel more alert, so it helps me. So we're on slide number 65 out of 122, so we're doing pretty good. So here are some anatomical structures of the speech mechanism. You have the larynx, the pharynx, the vocal folds, hard, soft, palate, the tongue, the maxilla, and the mandible. Upper jaw, lower jaw. These are the words I expect you to use. I didn't put the word lingual here, lingual sounds. It's pretty hard because lingual is an adjective, not a noun. So I'll just take tongue. Soft palate, I like for you to say velum. Hard palate, hard palate. What makes up most of the hard palate? What is the name of that bone that makes up most of the hard palate? Very good. Oh my God. Oh my gosh, y'all are making me so proud. I'm going to cry right here. I would just kiss you if you were right here in this room, you know. So good thing you're not, right? Okay, here are some of the sounds that are used, you know, that are produced with the lips, the nose, alveolar ridge, and the teeth. Okay. You also have to consider the aerodynamic features, and you have two types of airflow. I'm not sure what that means, so we're going to go with this. Airflow can be constricted at the laryngeal, oral, and nasal section. So you can understand that. It's constricted at the laryngeal. Where? Where is it constricted at the laryngeal area? Where is airflow constricted in the laryngeal area? Vocal folds. That's right, at the vocal folds. All right, so where is it constricted in the oral area? Where could it be constricted in the oral area? Well, what constricts it? That might be an easier question. Good, Julie. That's all right. Oh, the lips, the tongue, that's right. That's right. And then the nasal area, what constricts the air? The velum. Very good, very good, very good. All right. This is what they mean by two types of airflow. Two types of airflow. What they're talking about is the airflow that's constricted, causing the voice sounds, and then the airflow that is not as constricted, that would be a continuous airflow using the voiceless sounds. And then the constricted airflow, you will have a series of pulses where the vocal folds are opening and closing. They're opening because of the, why is opening? Because of what? Why do the vocal folds open? Because of what? The buildup of the glottic pressure. And why do they close? Two reasons. Okay, called the the Bernoulli principle and the Bernoulli principle and I'm thinking the elasticity, you know, the elasticity of the muscles, because it's very difficult if the vocal fold muscle tissue isn't normal. That's right. There you go, Tiffany. Yes, that's myoelastic aerodynamic theory. Okay. Speech articulation is a matter of lengthening, shortening, and constricting the tube known as the vocal tract. All right. You understand that very well, right? Lengthening, shortening, and constricting the tube. Now, let me ask you this. How might you lengthen your vocal tract? Oh, you know what? Julie. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, time placement. Yeah, I guess that could, because if you cut off the air, then that makes it a shorter, that's if it's a total cutoff of air. Mm-hmm. Oh, Angela is right there. Lowering, lip shaping. How could you lip shape? And somebody said something about lowering the mandible. Let me lower my mandible. Now you can change it. Set, lengthen it. Rounding, yes. Rounding the lip shape definitely lengthens the vocal tract. But very good. I like the way all of you are thinking. And I like that you answer, even if I laugh at your answers. Don't get offended by it. It's just part of my personality. I do that all the time. I have to really bite my lip, you know. And I don't mean anything by it. It's just that, you know, I'm just like, oh, wow. And sometimes I'm like, I should have thought about that. That's actually a good idea. So I really like the different answers. All right, fricatives. Do not have complete oral constriction. There is a narrow constriction. And stops have high intraoral air pressure. Those are some of the things you just have to consider. Or intraoral air pressure is another aerodynamic consideration. So when you constrict airflow, that's when you build up intraoral pressure, when you constrict it. So stops, you have some type of stopping or constricting of airflow, so you're going to build up pressure. Even with the fricatives, you're going to have some constriction, even though it's not a total block, but there is a partial block of constriction to get that sibilant or fricative type feature. Okay. If you have reduced intraoral pressure, you could be respiratory weakness, not building up enough subglottic pressure, or velopharyngeal dysfunction, meaning that loss of air through the nose, and then inadequacy of the oral constriction, meaning that, you know, if you're trying to produce a B, you don't keep your lips close together long enough, or if you're trying to produce a T, you don't do it correctly, you don't keep your tongue up long enough. So inadequacy of the oral constriction can also be a factor. So those are some factors that can cause a reduction in pressure. So you have to think about these kinds of considerations, the aerodynamic considerations, when you're working with people who have structural differences, structural deficits, or physically based problems such as cerebral palsy or cerebral palsy. So cleft palate kids or adults, CP kids or adults, you really have to think about, you know, when you're having them produce a speech, it's not just about putting your lips together to produce a B. Sometimes you got to think about, oh gosh, can they get enough subglottic pressure, you know, to get the changes in air pressure, you know, subglottic air pressure, supraglottic air pressure. You got to get those different pressures going in order for the child to be able to produce the sounds. So you got to look at the aerodynamic features as well for speech sounds. Another picture, I'm sure if I gave you this picture, you'll be able to name all of these parts. As far as I know, I don't give you any pictures of labeling. But here, if you look at the gray tissue, these would be your cartilages. That's represented in gray. The white, I believe, is the yellow maybe would be bone. The yellow, just to read the diagram. And then down here, you got your cricoid cartilage. Right, right here, you have your vocal folds. So anyway, I thought it was an interesting picture. Okay, here's your trachea, and see right here how close that is? That's your esophagus. Okay, and so, you know, when you swallow, your food needs to go down this way through your esophagus. When do you take swallowing? I think you take swallowing in the fall, right? So you'll get some beautiful pictures. He has some x-rays and different things that he'll show you, the swallowing instructor. It's a lot of fun, the swallowing class. Where to get more information, this one is your book, but it's 2013. That would be edition 7, I think, but the 2010, all of them, the first 2 chapters, pretty much the same. What you will have is maybe some different pictures, that kind of thing. But I will pull my test from the PowerPoint. My test will come from the PowerPoint. That doesn't mean you don't need your book. It's up to you whether you get the book or whether you think you can pass the course without the book. But this first test, all of my tests are pretty much based on the PowerPoint. I generally tell you and have it on the PowerPoint. However, students tell me when they read the book, they have a much deeper understanding, because if I say it and then you read it again in the book and then you read it again on the PowerPoint, you just get it a whole lot better. You get the concept a whole lot better. All right, so now we'll go to our next section. Here we're dealing with consonants and vowels. We're going to talk a little bit about the different features. A vowel versus a consonant. Vowels have no significant constrictions and consonants do. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. All vowels are voiced. Consonants can be either one. Vowels are open, so they're more sonorant. Consonants have constriction somewhere along the vocal tract, some type of constriction, even though there may be some may be less constricted than others. I'm not quite sure what that is, so I'm going to move on. Vowels serve as the syllable nuclei. It is the nucleus of the syllable. Without the vowel, what do you have? You just have a click. You know, you think about ba. Try to say ba without the You know, it's just I know that sounds more like a P. You see what I'm saying? So the vowel is the nucleus. It carries the information of what it is you're trying to say. It is carried in the vowel, not in the consonant. The features of the consonant are acoustically carried in the vowel. And you will see that on a spectrogram. The vowels will have more intensity. That's what you really hear. You hear a lot of the vowels than other syllable segments. And vowels carry the prosody, the prosodic features, the stress and intonation. So vowels are very important features. So when you have a child whose vowels are very different, then that's a very difficult case. A lot of children who have hard hearing impairments, they have a lot of difficulties with the vowels, and so their speech sounds very, very different, even if you can get them speech, because of their vowel distortions. Okay. The consonants, specific consonants may serve as syllable nuclei, like maybe an L or something like that, like bottle. You know, that L is carrying that consonant. I mean that syllable, sorry. The L is carrying the syllable. Consonants usually have less intensity than the vowels, and they do not typically carry the prosodic features. Usually that's carried in the vowel. So that lets you know how important vowels are for speech production. How does the brain define which vowel is being produced? And that is through vocal tract shape. Okay. So you distinguish a vowel by the position of the tongue, the height of the tongue, and the shapes of the lips. Because all vowels are voiced, so you don't have to worry about, whether it's voice or voiceless. You have something called vowels called monophthongs. And here it would be like an E as in B. And then you have a diphthong where you have a little bit of a change. The sound glides continuously from one vowel to another in a syllable. So here, the A in may, you can hear it. May, A, E. So it ends like with an E or I. May. And as a southerner, I really stretch it out. May. So anyway, this right here, 38, please. That's evidently the phonetics did not come through when this was copied or saved in PowerPoint. You know how you save it, and then sometimes some things come through and some don't. Some of the symbols. A triphthong, 3 consecutive vowels uttered in a single breath. So here you have the R as a vowel, a vocalic R. So you have sour. So this is a word that a lot of kids may have some trouble producing because of that vocalic R and because of the S. So it's not one of your easier words, more natural words to say. Amanda Hart, I'm not sure what she's saying there. Cook with a cat cue. So what is the definition of a vowel? So they can be tense or lax. Tense vowels are longer in duration than lax vowels. And so this could be on page 16 or it might be on page 14 of your text. But basically all you really need to know, this is as a review of phonetics, tense vowels are longer in duration than lax. High sounds raise the body of the tongue above the neutral position. Neutral position is sort of just resting. Low sounds lower the body of the tongue below the neutral positions. Back sounds retract the body of the tongue. Rounded versus non-rounded, narrowing of the lips. Nasal versus non-nasal. Oh my goodness. A bunch of typing fast, a bunch of typos there. 2 typos, not a bunch, just 2. So this is probably, I probably went in and put in some definitions a couple of years ago. An on-glide, the beginning of a diphthong. Off-glide, the end of a diphthong, diphthong. So I'm hoping that you remember this. You may see it on your first exam, these definitions, but I'm not going to go over phonetics that much. Now the English vowel quadrilateral, you have your front vowels over here, your back vowels there, high vowels, and your low vowels. So they say quadrilateral because you see this is your quadrilateral here, the square. But it's not a square because it's not perfect. So that's why they call it a quadrilateral. But so E represents a high in front. I is also high in front, but not as high as E. So when you're thinking of frequencies, when the brain is interpreting an E versus an I, then the brain will interpret frequencies. So you're going to have frequencies up at the E like with 3,000 hertz or something like that, and it might be like 2,600 hertz. So just a little bit lower than E, and so U is going to be a high vowel, but in the back of the mouth, which is going to give it, because it's in the back of the mouth, it's going to give it a little lower, it's going to give it lower frequencies. And then you have your central vowels here, and then you have your low front versus low back. Okay. Here are the features from a chart that I copied from your book. And up here you have the class features going down, sonorant, vocalic, and consonantal. And you can see all the vowels, none of them are consonants. All of them are vocalic, and all of them are sonorant. So that's one thing that's easy to remember, sonorants and vocalic, all vowels. Here you give you the features of high, low, back, rounded, and nasal. And then you see the features, if it has a plus, then the feature is there. The manner of articulation for vowels would be tense versus lax. And you can see you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tense vowels and 4 lax vowels. Now, if I'm studying this for phonetics, I would probably memorize the lax vowels because there are only 4, and then I said all the others are tense. That's how I used to do it. So I got my, if you're lax, then anything else left, it would be your tense vowels. Okay, so your consonants, there they are. We can go past this really quick. Oh, place of articulation, you have bilabials. That means you use both lips to produce. You have the labiodental. You use your lips, labial, dental teeth to make these sounds. And linguodental, you use your tongue and your teeth. And some people may call it interdental. And so linguodental would be like your THs, your tongue between your teeth. You see it didn't come out. There, the examples. Lingua alveolar, sounds made with the tongue, contacting the alveolar ridge. The palatal, sounds made directly behind the alveolar ridge where the vault of the mouth roof angles up. So up near the hard and soft palate. So those would be your palatals. Your velars, sound made at the velum or soft palate interior. So I need to go back on this one. This was just a hard palate. I'm sorry. Whoop. Oh, I went too far. The palatal is the hard palate, and the velum, the velars, would be the soft palate. The glottals, this is a sound made at the glottis. So that would be between your vocal folds, right? So, H is the sound for that. And some people have like a glottal stop. That's what that is. Now, so those are place of articulation. Now we'll go quickly through the manner. You have your stops or plosives, and there they are. You have your fricatives, a narrow constriction. You have your affricates. This sounds that involve a stop followed by a fricative, like in treasure, these, as in judge. You have your nasals, and sounds produced with the closure of the vocal tract. So you'll just have to just not look at the examples because the phonetics just didn't come through. You have your liquids and your glides. Liquids are vowel-like consonants, and that's why kids, you know, may get a little bit confused about the liquids. With the R, many times they will, the vocalic R will be substituted by a schwa, you know, butter, that type of thing. The consonant R and consonant L will be substituted with a glide. Because vowels or liquids have open tracks, so do glides. So you see they have this thing in common. So the child doesn't have whatever that differentiating feature is, that acoustic characteristic that their brain has not identified to separate the W from the L or the W from the R. And it is easier to do this, so it might be more natural. And so instead of this one, this one only involves the lips. This one you have to do the tongue, and this one is even more advanced because you gotta, do some more tricks, different types of positioning with the tongues in order to get R. I can tell you this, an R, a vocalic R, has been one of the hardest phonemes or sounds if you're doing a motor approach. I did a motor approach, so it would be one of the hardest sounds that I have had to try to remediate in a child, the vocalic R. L has been one of the easiest. Yes. Laterals are sounds made with midline closure, so you may have an L that comes off as a lateral, depending on how it is in the word. And then rhotics, sounds produced with the tongue in a retroflex position. R is in the word ray, ray. And so sometimes all R's aren't produced so retroflex. Even though I try to use this retroflex, really retroflex back to produce for the child to do the R, I really try to have them go all the way back as much as they feel like they're going to swallow their tongue. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't, just depending on the word. I mean, I tried all kinds of tricks to get them to put their tongue in the position for R. And there are lots of books out there. It's such a problem that speech pathologists, will devote an entire packet of drills just for R. So anyway. What does rhotic mean? Rhotic means sound produced with the whole corpus of the tongue. Corpus, what is corpus of the tongue? What am I talking about? Corpus. Body, very good. Toward the palate. Okay, let's see. 842, 95, I'm doing really well. Okay, the manner for a stop or plosive. And so you can have a bilabial. They could be a bilabial. A stop can be a bilabial, an alveolar. A stop can be a velar. A stop can be a glottal. And then here are the examples: voice versus voiceless. And you see the glottal has that little question mark. That's how I used to do the phonetic transcription for glottal. A fricative can have these different places of articulation. Okay, and then they're giving you the different speech sounds that would represent that place of articulation. But all of these, let's see, go all the way across, are fricatives. Okay, I always call it affricates, but this is affricative, affricatives. So people just have different words they use depending on the authority. Affricatives. You can have, we just got the one, you got the palatal. The place of articulation is palatal, and it's the hard palate. And here you have the voice and voiceless. Nasal, you have these three places of articulation, and they're your examples. Lateral, a place of articulation, there's your example. Rhotic, place of articulation, there's your example. Glide, place of articulation, and there's your example. Two examples. I can tell you this, I never thought of R, but I guess it is, but whenever I teach R, to kids, and I really didn't do phonetics well in graduate school, I never ever said palatal. But it makes sense. So here's your chart for the, again, it's the same chart, but I just put it here to remind people so I wouldn't have to go all the way back of the different distinctive features for consonants. So here are some examples. We talked a little bit about what co-articulation is, and so now you get to see examples. So look at the word see. See. So when you say the word see, if you notice, your lips are spreading, like you're smiling. See. Because your brain has told your muscles to do that in anticipation of the vowel, E. So the features of E are, the movements for E are being influenced, or the movement for S will be influenced by the movement of E. The movement of S will be influenced by the movement of E. So C. Now, Sue, the movement of S now is rounded because of U. So influence of one sound on another as the articulators move continually over a stretch of speech. This is anticipatory co-articulation, anticipating what will, need to be done. Okay. Oh, that looks like the same thing. I wonder if okay. Co-articulation occurs frequently. It is important for allophonic variation. So K is produced differently depending on the vowel. And this is important for you to know as a speech pathologist. K is produced differently depending on the vowel. So, but it is still heard or perceived as a K. Okay, so if you think about co-articulation, and you think about K as a, produced at the back near the velum, right? Because it's a velar. So your tongue is going to be up in the back. But now it has to anticipate. If K is at the beginning of the word, it's got to anticipate what is going to come next. So if I got to say the word key, my tongue has to go back for the vowel, and then I got to get ready to go to the front for the E. And it's high front at that. It's high front. So with that in mind, class, why might that be difficult for a child who, substitutes a T for a K? Why might the production of the word key be difficult for a child who substitutes a T for a K? Come on. Oh no. Think about phonetics. No. Think about phonetics. Key. Key. If you think about co-articulation, think about co-articulation. Co-articulation. No. Think about co-articulation and distinctive features. Let's go back to that chart a minute. Yes. They're pronouncing it as T if you have a T for K substitution in the word key. So they're saying T and then you're trying to train them to say key. So you show them a picture of a key, and they keep saying T. Why is that difficult for the child? If you think about co-articulation. I need more, Lillian. Oh, I agree. What did Tiffany say? I don't know what Tiffany said. Oh, shucks. I missed Tiffany's. Did Tiffany say something different? Okay, hold on. I'm going down. Fronting. What is the word key? Fronting is more natural. Oh, E. Oh, Tiffany, I missed yours. Yes. Not only is it front, what else, Tiffany? It's front just like the T, right? And what else? E is also what? It's front and high. Yes. To produce a T, the tongue has to move in a high position, right? So if you're going to give the child the word key to try to get him to say the K, it's going to be more difficult. If the child is already substituting a T for a K, and that's why they're coming to you, because they're saying T and tookie and tuck for cup. So you get your little pictures out. You say key. He says T. Say key. You say T. And I get so frustrated with speech pathologists. All right, because this child is using co-articulation. His brain, he can hear, his brain is doing the more natural thing, which is to produce that E. E is more natural, it's so easy. T is natural. Remember, T was one of the more natural sounds to say. T and E are produced at the front. The positioning of the tongue is high for both. It's easy for the child. Easy. Oh, Troger for Kroger. Yes. Now, ooh, gosh, she's got a blend in there too. So now, tell me this. You're the speech pathologist. You've been trained at TSU, so you know what you're doing. You're going to go in that therapy room. You're going to get your cards ready. Tell me, what do you think, based on what we just said? How can you get that child to more easily say K in the initial position if you want to use co-articulation? I mean, knowing that nope. There's no isolation. There's no isolation. If you're going to bring your pictures in, what pictures? I don't want you to do, and you can't do a K in isolation anyway, because it's a vowel. There's always a vowel. K is a vowel. There you go. Very good. Who is that? Lindsay Riston. Very good, Whitney. Use a different vowel. Yes, back vowel. Somebody else said back vowels, low vowels. Very good, Kendra. I think Kendra said it first. All right. Very good. Yes. Now let's see here. Let's see. Okay, you know that vowels carry the majority of the information of the consonant, right? The back vowel is tongue, doesn't have to anticipate going frontward. So now the child isn't going to have that extra movement, he's already going to be back because he's anticipating the vowel, right? So he has to do the K, which is back, but he has to anticipate the vowel. So now it's going to be easier for the brain to produce that K because the vowel is a back vowel. And so I used to always, when I was a clinical supervisor, I said, let me see your cards. And the students, this is what they would do. They would go and pick out the K deck. I'll take it off the shelf. Take out all the K cards in the initial position. And just say, no thought. Just say blah, say blah. And I was like, why are you having him say key? Da, da, da. Let's do that later. Let's get that K sound in. Let's make it so that it's easiest. How can we help the child, facilitate the child to produce the K? How do you use co-articulation to your advantage, as a speech pathologist? That's what makes you different from a parent. A parent can go buy K cards out of Walmart and say key, say car. A parent intuitively knows that a K is in the back of the mouth. You don't have to go to graduate school to say that, to tell a child that the K is produced in the back. I think they might teach that in reading. Phonics. You know, but you as a professional know that certain words will be more stimulable than other words. That certain words will give you give that child a better chance of producing the K correctly than other words. And you have the expertise because you know phonetics, you know speech science, and you know artic, that you will be able to pick out the right words to start with before introducing the not so great words. Yes. The other way that you can do this, and to go back to the isolation type, instead of isolation, because isolation is still a vowel. You can't do, nobody does, are you going to have the child do that? Otherwise you're having to go k. That is a K and a schwa. That is not isolation, that's a syllable. You see what I'm saying? So you still have co-articulation. Now that's a good because ka is more of, you know, more of a schwa, so it's more neutral. Now, but how can you do it and not have any anticipatory co-articulation? How can you teach this child K in a word without the context interfering? I would say I'd give you extra credit, whoever gets this, but I won't remember because I won't write it down. So I'm not going to say that. Anybody want to give it a go? What word could you use that you could help the child to say it, and it would be like an isolation, but you would give it meaning. You would give it some meaning. It would be a better way to do it. Nobody? Can you think about maybe positioning instead of context? Like the position of the, yes, Lillian, an N sound. Because there's no sound coming afterwards. So let's suppose a child could say the, so you can use the word book. Oh, I used to do this all the time. And oh my God, that K would just come on out. I wouldn't do block. The only reason I wouldn't do block, I would do block, but it would be hard. I wouldn't mark it down because it's a blend at the beginning, the L. So I would try to stay with CVC, the more natural way to do it. So I would go, book, bake, those kinds of things, make, cook. Yes. Do you see? So now he doesn't have to worry about cup. He doesn't have to worry about the K and then what comes next. So in a way, you're still making it a meaningful exercise, but he doesn't have to worry about the co-articulation that's, coming afterwards. And it works, people. Now, talked, Tiffany, because of the LK, for me, that would be difficult. All righty. Well, I hope we can, I can give you several tips along the way. When I used to do therapy, if you were a mild artic case, I used to promise my parents I'll have them out in about 3 months, maybe 4. And if it was 6 months for mild, 1 year for moderate, 2 years for severe. Now, I don't know what you mean by all sounds. So, Jackie, it's all individual. You have to think through the sounds. So you have to think, okay, is this the sound that is going to be the most meaningful? Is this the sound that occurs most frequently? Is this the sound that's going to help my child sound better, the quickest? So that's how I choose my sounds. Which one will help this child sound more intelligible, the quickest? Then my second thing is this. Which one is easier or more developmentally appropriate? But developmentally, even if it's not developmentally appropriate, I still might do that sound if it's going to help the child the most. I don't go by, oh my God, he can't do a P at the end. Who cares about a final P? You know, I can understand cup just for cup. I can understand that. So if that's all he's doing, then I will do final P. But if there are some other things that are more crucial to work on, that's the way I go. And that's how I was able to get success. So you spend 6 months or 3 months doing final P, and you know what I'm saying? It's not really, he has initial P and middle P. I will not, I'll work on P near the end when we're kind of just fine-tuning the speech, but I got to work on sounds that are more impactful on his intelligibility. But we'll talk about that as we get closer to intervention. Well, that's a good question, yes. Okay, oh, hold on, I'm trying to finish. I'm almost finished, 102. We already talked about that. Oh, anticipatory, you need to know the difference between anticipatory versus retentive. Anticipatory co-articulation is the articulation of the following sound affects the preceding sound. So the S is affected by the O. So you round your lips. Retentive co-articulation, the articulation of the preceding sound affects the following sound. So the word is me. So this M is affecting the vowel E. So it's the nasalization of the vowel. So anticipatory and retentive. So here are just some examples of, and listen, this is normal. This is normal. We haven't even, I've brought in disorder just to kind of help you understand normal, but this chart is normal. So nasalization of a vowel, that is going to be normal, okay? So man becomes nasalized. And this little symbol up here is for nasalization. I never learned my symbols. The rounding of a consonant, you know, queen, the K will be rounded, and you put a little W. So anyway, this is giving you examples. I won't ask you to do fine-tune phonetic transcription. I won't ask you to do that. Excuse me. But these are some examples. Let's see. Nasalization, rounding, lengthening of a vowel, voicing of a sound. I must be, my vocal folds are becoming dysfunctional. They are getting kind of dry, losing a little elasticity. They must need a little rest. I've been going on, but we're almost finished, and I really don't want to stop. But I think, yeah, I need to get something to drink. You're right, Lindsay. And why does drinking work, people? Why does drinking water work, especially since the water is not dripping on my vocal folds? Because if they drip on my vocal folds, I will cough. Why is it that drinking water works for, you know, my vocal folds, to make them feel more elastic and better? Anybody remember? Didn't I ask you that question before? Nobody remembers. Nobody's writing. Okay. I love you, Lindsay. Because you're, you know, so when you drink and you become hydrated, more hydrated, your cells in your body will absorb the nutrients from the water, the hydration, and your body will take it to where it is needed the most. And so it is needed in the vocal folds, so that through the blood cells, it will get that nutrition to the muscles. Excuse me. So it's a cellular respiration. That's and how cells get their nutrition. So the muscle cells in the vocal folds will then get the hydration through cellular respiration. We didn't talk about that? Yes. I thought we did. Okay. All right. So some of my people must have left me. I think some of you went to sleep on me. Okay. That may have been my on-land class in anatomy. We brought that up. I think somebody asked me the question. Dr. Gibson, why is it that when we suck on candy, it helps us with our throats when our throats are dry? And so, you know, yeah. So that's a good, what you call it, extra credit, you know, on your test question. All right, let's look at this co-articulation matrix. Yes, very good, Julie. Well, now you know. So the bilabials use your lips. So why is this important? This is a chart I put in. I can tell you that. I put in all the charts because you can see how crooked it is. Those articulators that have strong restrictions. Oh, so for a bilabial, your lips are strongly involved, but none of these. Labiodental, the lips are strongly involved. So it's only talking about the interdental, the tip of the tongue, and the blade of the tongue. I must have thought this was important 2 years ago. I think it is still kind of interesting in terms of co-articulation. These are the parts of the tongues that will be affected. And this may help you in deciding, you know, the vowels and the context. Because if a vowel is produced more high, then, you know, the tip of the tongue may be an issue. If the consonant that you are trying to get them not to produce is produced high, then you're not going to, or produce with the tip of the tongue, you're not going to want to use vowels that are in the front. That's what I'm saying. If you don't want them to produce a consonant that's in the front. So if you want them to produce a K, which is more in the back, then you want to go with vowels that would have to do with using the back of the tongue, or maybe more of the body of the tongue instead of the tip. So syllable structures can be divided into 3 parts: the peak, the onset, and the coda. The peak would be the most prominent one. It is generally the vowel, is the most acoustically intense. The onset is the beginning, and the coda is the end. So usually the peak is the vowel, the onset is the initial consonant, and the coda is the end, or the final consonant, usually. Syllable structures, you usually describe them as either open or closed. An open syllable structure would not have a coda or a final consonant. So it would be do. A closed syllables that do have a coda or a final consonant. That's pretty easy. I just want you to know these words: open, close. Like if I say open syllable structure, you're not like, what in the world is she talking about, open syllable structure? Or closed syllable structure. You need to know the terms. You need to know the term coda, peak, you know, that type, onset, those kinds of things. Syllable structure can be affected by the number of syllables, meaning that a child will have trouble saying a multisyllabic word, more so than a one-syllable word. So they may drop a syllable in a multisyllabic word or drop 2 syllables. The type of syllable, The syllable structure can be affected by the type of syllable and the degree of syllable stress, whether the syllable is at the end or the beginning of the, like middle, syllables in the middle are sometimes dropped, the degree of syllable stress. If it's an unstressed syllable, sometimes the kid doesn't hear it because it doesn't, have any kind of salience or importance to it, and so they may drop the unstressed syllable and only say, the syllable that is stressed. Okay. Suprasegmentals are used to characterize syllables, words, phrases, and sentences, and it includes all of those things. Oh, this is important. Stress is carried primarily by the vowel or the end of the segment of the syllable. Okay. Intonation, I want you to notice this. The way in which the fundamental frequency changes from syllable to syllable. Intonation, the way in which the fundamental frequency changes from syllable to syllable. What does that mean, fundamental frequency? The way in which the what? The pitch changes from syllable to syllable and can dictate a speaker's emotions, loudness, and pitch. Oh, I must need to delete some of this. Juncture, or either I duplicated. I don't know why this is duplicated. Well, this is good. Yeah, this is a duplicated, oh my gosh, I hope I didn't put the wrong thing in. Okay. Okay. All right, this is a very simplistic diagram of your vocal tract. Remember, it's like two tubes. This is a tube, this is a tube, and this is a tube. Well, three tubes. So you have the two tubes with the air coming in and out, and then you have this tube here where air goes in and out as well. And this is your vocal folds down here. This is your mouth, and this is your nose. And then, here is going to be your velum. If you go up here to A, if you close off your nasal cavity, so you have A here, and your vocal folds, you see the vocal folds here, the vocal folds are vibrating, you are going to have vowels, liquids, and glides. For B, if you close off the nasal cavity and you don't have the vocal folds vibrating, then you're going, and you have constriction up here in the oral cavity, then you're going to have voiceless stops because you have the constriction in the oral cavity. That's a picture of voiceless stops. C, you got the nasal cavity blocked off. You have some constriction here in the oral cavity, but it is not totally constricted. And you don't have voicing here, then you're going to have voiceless fricatives. This, Whitney, this is voiceless. See right down here, B, voiceless stops. So if this was a voice stop, then you will have a little diagram here showing the vocal folds vibrating, and you would have this X up here. Oh yeah, it is B as in, yes, sorry, yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, it is in B as a serial listing of B. Oh, I didn't even notice that, Brittany. I mean, Whitney. Or Brittany. Oh, Tiffany, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I did not notice that there was even that, yeah, the A, B, yeah, the C. It's just a listing. Like, they should have put a number 1, a number 2. That is funny. I know. Well, my voice is fried. We're almost done, though. Okay, and so C, as in like number 3, you have, oh, I did this one. So this one would be voiceless, but here you see you have some constriction, not total constriction like a stop, but some constriction, you get fricatives. And then D, you have voicing, and you have constriction here, but look, your nasal cavity is open, so your air is going to be flowing here. So now you're going to get nasal. All righty. We're almost done. Ooh. Oh, I don't even think I even want to talk about this. Can we talk about this part right here next week? It is 9:15. I can give you your, oh my gosh, and I got my spectrogram. Let's do that next week. You want to do that next week? Hey, Jackie, do not put an exclamation mark. There you go. I like that. Can you do, is that a sad face? I like the sad face. Oh, do we have to stop class? That's what I like. Okay. But yes, and so that I can say, yes, we must stop. We must stop. All right. So any questions, people? Any questions about all of this content? But good news, you don't have a quiz. Unless you want a quiz. Do you want a quiz next week? Oh. Oh, yay, you don't have a quiz. Oh, Lindsay says, sure, let's have a quiz. Anybody else want a quiz? Oh, I'm not getting, sorry, Lindsay, you're by yourself. Angela said, let me think about it. All right, let's think about it. Let's not have a quiz. Oh, I got another. Wow, look at this. If it's optional, Kendra, I don't know how to grade it. You know what I mean? And it becomes too confusing. And I don't want to get confused. You know, I'll be like, okay, who said that they wanted to do quizzes and who? I'll think about it. Because if you did a quiz, if you want to do quizzes, then maybe I can take away 5 percentage points off of one of your tests. And that could go as a quiz grade for those. And those who don't want to do quizzes, you can just have the, no, that's too much for me. That's too much. Because then I got to do different weights. I don't want to do that. Let's talk about it next week. We will not have a quiz. We will not have a quiz next Tuesday. All right? So we'll talk about it next week or the week after. Oh, is there a way to do that? I'm not sure. How do you do a poll on here? I know there is a way. I'm going to ask Dr. Smith. Can you raise your hand maybe? Wait a minute. Hold on. Let's see. Yes, no. Let's see. Hold on. Stay away from the session. Ooh, why would I tell somebody to stay away from the session? Oh, step away from the session. I'm sorry. Oh, look, you can put little spaces up here telling me you're confused. Okay, all right. There's a raise hands button. It is up at the check mark. All right, let's wait till next week. Let's wait till next week. Think about it when you're not tired and your brain isn't fried, because some of you might say the wrong thing. You might not really want to do it because your brain is fried. You might be easily led by your classmate. And those of you who say, I don't want to do it, you might be fried. It might be easily led too. So I want you to have clear minds. So let's do it next week. Let's think about it. Okay? Let's think about it. Well, you have plenty of opportunities to take a quiz. We don't have to do it next week. All right. But I think they're helpful. But all right. Good night.